What is the dumbest rule your school ever enforced? Story 1. There was this one time where I was like, oh, you should go eat out in the hallway with your daughters. And she was like, nah, I'm going to sit here with my daughter and her friends and talk to them and enjoy their presence. Now, usually if a parent came for lunch, the student could invite one friend to join, unless you had siblings. Then there were too many people, so you couldn't invite a friend. Anyway, one of my older sister's friends whispered to my mom that she was going to move so she wouldn't get in trouble for talking. This was a 9-year-old. Story 2. Toilet paper rationing. Now, this was in 1997 to 1998, by the way. Apparently, the high school girls' room was going through too much toilet paper, so the dean, a woman, stood outside the door and distributed a few squares of one-ply institutional toilet paper to us as we went in. If she noticed toilet paper on the floor, our ration got cut down. If we asked for more, for bigger jobs, we were told to save it for home. There were several episodes of girls stuck in stalls until friends could beg for more TP because of period messes or unexpected bowel incidents. The dean wouldn't even hand it over. She would go in the bathroom and then pass out a few squares at a time over the door. And if you didn't catch it as it fell and it landed on the floor, well, that's your fault and you're not getting any more. If you used more than she thought necessary, tough luck. Go to class with blood on your body, I guess. It took about a week of extremely angry parents coming to the school and then calling both the school and the school board, but we finally got our toilet paper back. Unlimited. How did we celebrate? Well, it sounds like the school went from TP rationing to a TP revolution in record time. Like, who knew that a humble bathroom necessity could inspire such passionate activism? I guess when you mess with teenagers and their toilet paper, you're bound to get a riot of unraveled consequences. It's impressive to see how they rolled with the situation and ultimately wiped away the TP tyranny. Kudos to the parents for standing up for their kids' rights to proper bathroom supplies. Like, remember, when it comes to toilet paper, it's always best to aim high and aim for unlimited rolls. Story 3. Went to school during the time where health and safety suddenly started going crazy, and they introduced a no contact under any circumstances rule, i.e. no touching another person, and we were like 6 or 7 years old. Suddenly, one day, not only is the tag suddenly illegal, but they actually enforced it. I remember one day like 70% of the school's population was pulled off of the playground and made to sit on the floor in the hall for the crime of just playing the games that children play. Story 4. The dumbest one I suffered was in the early 90s in my junior high, which banned all jackets and jacket-like clothing in class because there was a story about how some kids in an inner-city school had brought guns to class in starter jackets. Now keep in mind that my junior high school was in a medium-sized college town, not anywhere with an actual gang problem. The school also had a terrible climate control system and was always cold. The rule was just really absurd. You couldn't wear jackets or hoodies, but pullover hoodless sweatshirts were okay, as were other sweaters. The rule was finally revoked after we had a fire alarm incident in the middle of February that had the whole school standing outside for 45 minutes in freezing weather while the fire department checked for whatever had set off the alarm. Story 5. My school banned water bottles. A water drinking fad started at my school, mostly among girls, and soon all of them were walking around carrying plastic purified water bottles from the major brand. They all wanted to look health conscious and cool. But then it became a matter of showing off who can be the most healthy and hydrated. So having a mere 750 milliliter bottle wasn't enough anymore. So the girls began bringing larger and larger water bottles and jugs to school to outshine one another. Eventually, they began carrying 5-liter plastic jugs with them all over the school ground. It looked silly. Now, eventually, the guys jumped on board the fad and brought even larger water containers to school. One guy brought a baggage trolley to school on which he transported a 20-liter industrial water dispenser bottle. Now, at this point, the principal had had enough. It was a posh, image-conscious school with fancy uniforms, and he didn't like seeing the students all lugging around big plastic jugs of water, looking like homeless people. So he banned any and all water bottles from school and told the students to drink water from the bathroom taps and other drinking fountains. Now this is dumb because drinking water regularly is actually healthy. He could have simply banned all bottles over 750 milliliters and could have simply told us to keep the bottles hidden away in our bags and out of sight when walking around between classes. So it seems like the battle of the water bottles escalated to epic proportions, with students lugging around containers that could rival water coolers. It must have been quite the sight to see the hallways just filled with students resembling hydration superheroes. But alas, the principal, in his quest to preserve the school's posh image, decided to just extinguish the water frenzy altogether. Perhaps he feared the rise of a water jug fashion show, or maybe a full-blown water Olympics in the courtyard. While his ban on all water bottles may have seemed a bit extreme, I can't help but imagine the awkwardness of students quenching their thirst directly from bathroom taps, like desperately trying to maintain an air of sophistication while sipping tap water like connoisseurs. Story 6. I went to a high school for smart kids. My senior year, they instituted a rule to crack down on kids cutting class. If you're 45 minutes or more late to class, like 90-minute blocks, it's an absence. Otherwise, it's tardy. If you get 3 tardies, that is 1 unexcused absence. If you get 20 unexcused absences, you automatically fail the class. So my friend and I figured out the exact day that we were going to stop coming to the first period English on time. And as long as we got there within 45 minutes of it starting, and end the year with 19 absences. Now, of course, we went to a school for nerds, so instead of using the time to do drugs and smoke cigarettes, we played tennis. The teacher would ask us why we always showed up sweaty and late, and we just laugh it off. Story 7. No leaving the dorm unless it's for a fire alarm. Now, I went to a boarding school from the age of 7, and that rule meant that we couldn't get out of our dormitory to have a wee at night. We had a plastic tub that one of the girls brought in that we used, and then we had to smuggle the tub to the bathroom in the morning without the matron seeing. Stupid, bloody rule. Also, this was 80s, early 90s Southern England, and our punishments were pretty awful, but we survived. We all did. I'm still in touch with some of the girls that I boarded with back then, and we all have scars, but we're a tough lot. Story 8. We suddenly one day weren't allowed to stand in circles during recess because, I quote, we could be dealing drugs. I will add that for the years prior, we had been standing in circles with no problems. But next recess, we stood in a triangle, cue the principal going wild. Next day, we stood in a square, and the principal kept us inside for a week, and then threatened us all with detentions if we did it again. I believe their idea was open-ended circles so that they could see what we were doing. Still stupid, though. Story 9. I wasn't allowed to test my blood sugar in class. I'm a type 1 diabetic. Now, some teachers didn't care, but most made a fuss about it. Go to the nurse's office if you need to do that. It's a distraction to everybody, and other students might get freaked out by the needles, even though it was just a little prick that nobody could even see. And none of my classmates ever complained. I told my parents about the rule, and my dad got furious and told me to do it anyways, and that I have absolutely nothing to worry about as far as getting into trouble at home goes. So to me, this was free reign to stick it to the bastards at school. I tested every class more than I needed to, just to spite them. Now, eventually I got sent to the office and my principal called my dad. My dad showed up, and I've barely ever seen him as furious as he was that day. He was cursing, yelling, tearing papers off the walls. I was never, ever, ever bothered about it again. Story 10. My high school had coordinates, not a uniform, but they stopped selling the shorts like a decade before I started there. So me and a bunch of buddies tracked down used pairs and started wearing them. Next year, shorts were banned outright, so me and a bunch of buddies on the rugby team started wearing skirts because the rules said skirts were acceptable, but they didn't specify gender. So you had a bunch of guys with hairy legs walking around in skirts. We deliberately hiked them up a little bit to show some thigh. Shorts were then allowed again within the week. Well, looks like your rugby team really knew how to skirt around the rules. Talk about some creative problem solving. Like, who knew that a display of hairy legs in skirts could have such a persuasive effect? Clearly, your fashion statement made a lasting impression on the school administration. I guess they couldn't handle the therific sight for too long, and the shorts were back in action before you knew it. So kudos to this guy and his buddies for taking the dress code rebellion to a whole new level. Story 11. A few weird ones and their reasoning behind making them. 1. Girls weren't allowed to wear tops with spaghetti straps because they could easily be cut with scissors. No tube tops either because they could easily be pulled down. No bra straps showing whatsoever because it was considered indecent. No soft drinks with actual sugar because if it spilled, it would make a sticky mess. Diet soft drinks were fine because they wouldn't get as sticky. No beverages of any kind, only in certain classrooms depending on who the teacher was. Not like computer labs where it was obvious that drinks shouldn't be allowed. I'm talking like random math or history classes based on who your teacher was. Whereas the same class taught by a different teacher, it was allowed. Because F you if you're thirsty, Also, no shirts from the company Billabong because it says bong, and that's a drug reference. And last but not least, because this one is a really funny one, and I'm hoping someone from my class sees this and can confirm, no wearing the Alice in Wonderland joint smoking caterpillar shirts that we designed for homecoming, because that's absolutely not a paintbrush. This one makes sense, though. No idea how it got approved. Story 12. We had an up staircase and a down staircase. You could only go up the up staircase and only go down the down staircase. If you were caught going the wrong direction on either staircase, you would get some kind of warning or strike. I will admit that it did help from keeping the stairs get too congested in between classes, but it was a huge pain in the butt if you had a class right next to the up staircase and had to go downstairs for your next class because the down staircase was way at the other end of the floor, so you basically had to book it to your next class. Another stupid rule was only having 3 minutes in between classes. I went to a huge high school, so you basically had to speed walk or jog to classes that were far. And with the whole staircase issue mentioned before, it resulted in people being late for class constantly. Story 13. This may not sound too terrible to some, but it has stuck with me even 4 years after graduating. Now, in my school, at the end of every semester, all the high school and middle school students would be ushered into the gym, and we all sat on the floor. Then they would start calling names of those who had made it onto the honor roll. If your name was called, you stood up. After every name was called, those standing would be given donuts and have a party. But those who didn't make it on the honor roll were just forced to sit there in silence. You couldn't leave for any reason. I can't tell you how many times my soul was crushed when my name wasn't called. I'm fine if you want to have a party for the people that made it. I'm happy for them. But do you really need to ostracize the kids that didn't? Story 14. Our administration decided that parents could not bring anything to their kids' lunch period unless they brought enough for the entire lunch room. Cue intro music. Junior year of high school, I heard about a freshman girl in the lunch period before mine, whose mother had stopped by to drop off a birthday cake for her and her friend. Now, doing the right thing, she stopped at the office before going to the lunchroom. She could have easily just skipped checking in at the office, as the lunchroom was directly next to the main doors. And the secretary asked why she was visiting, and she told her about the cake. Now, after a moment, the secretary tells her that she's not allowed to give her daughter the cake she had brought for her birthday because there is not enough cake for everyone in the lunchroom to share. Now, obviously, this is BS and complete nonsense, as no parent is going to bring enough for several hundred kids to share. The mom was turned away and told to go home, couldn't even go tell her daughter happy birthday. The following week, I wrote a letter to the editor of the school paper and had it published. The paper came out on Friday, so that day I prepared a protest to pair with the letter. I made a sign, got a serving spatula and some paper plates, and ordered 2 full sheet cakes, 1 vanilla, 1 chocolate. I then skipped 2 classes and on my own lunch and set up a table in the lunchroom against the wall and put up the sign reading "free cake," and then proceeded to hand out slices of cake to every single person in every single lunch period, including the girl who had missed out on her own cake the previous week, all while making sure that everyone knew why that they were getting a free cake. I got detention for a week for skipping class, but the administration stopped enforcing their crap rule about having to provide enough for everyone. Anytime a parent wanted to do something nice for their kid, totally worth it, and I still have the copy of the school newspaper saved somewhere. Ah, yes, the sweet taste of rebellion and cake. Your protest was a piece of pastry perfection, serving justice one slice at a time. Now, who knew that a simple act of defiance could be so deliciously satisfying? Kudos for this person for taking a stand and reminding the administration that rules should never come between a student and their well-deserved birthday treat. Their detention might have been a temporary setback, but the victory was forever etched in the history of sweet triumphs. You better keep that newspaper copy as a token of your heroic confectionery revolution. Story 15. The dumbest written rule: no jackets worn in the hallways. Meaning, if you were taking a 10-minute brisk walk across the entire campus, from the annex to the band room or vice versa, and you had to pass through the main building, you had to stop at the door in the freezing cold weather, put your books on the ground, take off your jacket, walk through, takes about 10 to 30 seconds depending on where you crossed, and then repeat the process once you were back outside. They did not give a crap if you would only be inside for literally 7 steps. and they had people posted at these points specifically to punish those who would not yield. Jackets could be worn outside and in the classroom, and hoodies could be worn wherever as long as they didn't have a zipper. There's many more rules like this, unfortunately. Also, the dumbest way a reasonable rule is enforced: nothing distracting. Basically, this is a way for the admins to pick and choose who they want to single out. Like, I had a friend that went to detention 2 to 3 times a week because she was, quote, distracting. Now, here's a short list of some of the more ridiculous things that the administration deemed distracting. Too much black clothing, shirt too brightly colored, too many necklaces, studs on belt, chain on boots, like 2 inches long, necklace size in girth, nail polish, alternating shades of light and dark purple, hair too teased, hair too weird, like an asymmetric bob, classic Karen nowadays, but it was 2007. Eyeshadow was too weird. School colors, black and gold for the pep rally that we were not allowed to attend unless we were wearing our school colors. Also, boots too tall. Shirt too busy, like with paint splatters. Too many accessories. 4 bracelets, 1 armband, 2 necklaces. Lipstick too dark, burgundy. Lipstick too bright, neon pink. And finally, my favorite, which they classified as insubordination: plain white t-shirt, blue jeans, and a brown belt. No makeup, hair pulled back. Why? Because she was so sick of going to detention that she wanted to wear something that couldn't possibly get her in trouble. The psycho principal took it as an act of protest and started tossing accusations like crazy. She ended up transferring. Now, also, that principal is now involved in a huge conspiracy scandal that will result in federal prison time if he's convicted. Story 16. I went to a private Catholic school for elementary and middle school. The rules included no nail polish except for pale pink or clear, no name brand symbols on shoes or socks, or anything, nothing colorful, makeup can be worn but only the bare minimum, no phones at all, not on the bus or to call home, you have to go to the office to call home, crosses 2 inches and below can be worn, nothing over. Skirts were measured, and we were made to kneel in the hallway so that they can measure with a ruler. I was once in detention with a girl who wore brown nail polish. I was in detention for missing 3 assignments. Story 17. This is a true story, and in 2nd grade, we got a new principal who I guess was very concerned with liability issues. We used to have ice cream ladies that would come around the cafeteria with ice cream, kind of similar to what you would find on an ice cream truck. A bunch of cool options, basically. Now, the new principal took away ice cream and then replaced it with frozen juice bars, which were literally a frozen burnt piece of ice-flavored fruit. They were pretty terrible. She cited the reason for this change being that it wasn't fair to kids with milk and peanut allergies that everyone else could eat normal ice cream and they couldn't. Like, okay, don't know why that's your biggest concern when they made any kids with allergies sit completely away at an allergy table, but whatever. So a few weeks of this and all the kids start to miss our ice cream. So we organize a petition. Now someone, probably a teacher when I think about it, printed out ice cream coloring sheets for everyone and we colored them and hung them up in the walls. And this is every grade and every student in every grade, even the ones with allergies. We all signed a petition and got a 5th grader to read it out loud during the morning announcements. We were all so rallied around this movement. It was really cool, actually. Even the teachers were all on our side, probably because they saw how passionate that we were about it. Now, a few days goes by and the new principal gets on the announcements and says something along the lines of, after reading the petition and seeing how passionate everyone is about this, we're still not going to provide any ice cream. And everyone screamed in our classrooms with just utter despair. This jerk must have gotten a power trip from disappointing hundreds of kids like that. And when I think about it now, she must have had some serious control issues. Never hated a principal so much in my entire life. It's kind of both amusing and disheartening to hear about your school's ice cream saga. Like, the determination and unity displayed by all the students, from organizing a petition to proudly displaying ice cream coloring sheets, it's all truly impressive. It's a shame that the new principal couldn't see the joy and just innocent pleasure that ice cream brought to the students. Her decision to deny the request despite the overwhelming support, that's just gonna leave everyone crushed. And it's clear that ice cream held a special place in their heart. And sometimes it's the little things that make school so much more memorable. So here's to hoping that future principals will have a better understanding of the importance of ice cream and I guess morale, and its role in fostering a happy school environment. In the comments, anyone want to share the crazy rules that were either enforced or maybe a rule that was never enforced?